Thank you, moderator. Before I proceed with my presentation, I would like to show you a very short introduction on video prepared by the media team in our department.
You can talk a lot about pain, but if you're not in pain, you won't know what it is like. You can talk a lot about displaced people, but if you're not one of them yourself, you won't know what it means not to have your floor, your ceiling, nor your home. You can talk a lot about refugees, but if you're not one, you won't know what it means to be a lonely stranger, left on your own to face your destiny. You can talk a lot about DPs, but unless you, one of your sibling or a member of your family is one, you won't realize and understand how you should adapt to a new life and how to serve yourself. You can talk a lot about sick people, but unless you're sick and in need for someone to treat you, and unless you experience sickness and pain, you won't appreciate how important it is to find someone to help you. You can talk a lot about a child who has lost his parents, siblings, or a body organ. But if you don't have a child who has experienced this, you won't realize how much pain and anxiety this child and his or her family are going through. You can say a lot about the hungry, the naked and the cold, but if you're not one of them, you won't be able to feel the suffering which such people sustain. You can say a lot about many people who experience various situations of anxiety, fear, shock, stigma, frustration and despair. But unless you are one of these, you cannot imagine how such people live their daily lives and how much they wish if someone would come and help them overcome their sadness and pain. You can recount, he can elaborate, and we can narrate. Yet, only one thing can console us and alleviate the pain. It is our love for Jesus Christ, remains more powerful than all the pain, because he's standing at our door, knocking on it, waiting for us to ask for his help. He experienced greatest humiliation, most cruel whipping and suffering, nails pierced his body. But he endured all that in silence, because his aim was the salvation of all of us. However great our agony is, it cannot be compared to his. Let our trust in him be great. Let's feel the pain he endured, and let's experience great joy and comfort. This is what our church teaches us, and this is what our department experiences every day. So do all its volunteer. Our faith is always translated into our actions.
dear eminences, graces, fathers, sisters, and brothers in Christ. When I started writing down this contribution, I could not help contemplating what to begin with and what message I should convey about the situation I have come from. In fact, the consequences of the crisis that my country is undergoing now at the outset of its 5th year are too colossal to sum up in a few words or even in a few pages. Everybody nowadays is aware that the current humanitarian crisis in Syria is definitely the largest ever in the modern society and history. When we talk about 12 million people gravely affected, 9.5 million internally displaced persons, and 2.5 million Syrians driven away to neighboring countries, the figure would be sufficient to imagine the size of the monstrous crisis that Syria and the Syrians are suffering from today. Ever since the events broke out, thousands of schools and homes, as well as hundreds of hospitals and dispensaries, have been demolished, broken, or looted, consequently put out of service. A sizable part of the country's infrastructure have been completely destroyed, so Syria now badly suffers from the shortage of medical and educational services and frequent cuts of water and electricity supplies, with all the grave consequences of such tragic realities on people's overall lives and health circumstances. Thousands of children have had to drop out and cannot continue their schooling, while thousands of Syrian families now live in collective housing shelters, which has negatively reflected on their privacy and social lives. Besides, over 3 million persons have lost their job and consequently the income necessary to provide for their families. At the economic level, the country has already lost about $200 billion in infrastructure. The national income has lost approximately $100 billion, while the Syrian pound has lost 80% of its pre-crisis value against hard currencies. With all this in mind, we can conceive the scale of the widespread devastation that the crisis has brought on my country. What made things even worse was the emergence of armed extremist Takfiri groups, which view anyone other than their fanatic as an infidel. Those have spared none of the criminal forms of killing, torture, or forced displacement, and have subsequently become a serious threat not only for Syria, but also to the whole world as well. Following this brief preamble, I will go straight to the essential part and say, ever since the events in Iraq broke out and following the subsequent huge influx of Iraqis of all affiliations into Syria in 2006, the Department of Ecumenical Relations and Development at the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch took the initiative and started to render services to the Iraqi refugees. However, its main incentive here was not only the social duty, but rather its firm belief that social service or diaconia is an essential part of its spiritual message. Supported by its partner, mainly the IOCC, our department provided all forms of assistance to displaced Iraqis. Our experience in dealing with Iraqi refugees enabled us to act quickly and efficiently on the provision of the relief services to displaced Syrians as soon as large numbers of Syrian families fled their original places of residence where armed conflicts and forced displacement flared up. The department stretched out the scope of its work, recruiting and training a large number of volunteers and launching contact offices in most Syrian governorates. 18 offices attached to the department become operational in 10 governorates, while more than 470 volunteers and staff actively provided services in various fields to the displaced and affected population. With the strong support rendered by its partner at the forefront, the IOCC, the department has managed to provide aid to over 2 million beneficiaries to date. Our programs comprise the following fields: distribution of food and non-food items, education and training to thousands of regular students and school dropouts, providing job opportunities and ensuring loans for small projects, psychological support programs for families, women, youth, and children, programs for sanitary rehabilitation and for the promotion of hygiene and water facilities, providing medical aids, medicines, and surgeries, water programs that include digging wells in the areas where large groups of displaced people are hosted, programs for rehabilitating public and private housing shelters and restoring the affected and damaged homes of those going back to their places of residence. Programs for rehabilitating affected public and private schools and public services facilities such as hospitals and dispensaries. Cash for work programs that provide employment opportunity to displaced and affected people, replacing the medical equipment that has been looted at numerous hospitals, providing electrical generators for many public and health services facilities. The Department of Ecumenical Relations and Development is second in terms of size and performance in Syria today. Thanks to the support of IOCC and other potential partners and donors, the department is undergoing a steady development process of both its administrative and logistic structure as to match international criteria. In appreciation of its distinctive performance, the department, represented by its director, was awarded the International Award of Humanitarian Work in 2013 by Interaction Foundation here in the United States. Upon a kind nomination from the IOCC, this tribute was not, however, based on performance alone, but on neutrality, transparency, and credibility as well, for the department has always provided aid to all those in need, irrespective of their religious, political, or social backgrounds, so to speak. We have been living in Syria side by side with our Muslim brothers for centuries, interacting with each other as one and the same family. My Muslim neighbor always is certainly more intimate to me than a relative who lives abroad or away. The unique type of living dialogue is in fact unmatched in other countries, and we are now afraid of losing that heritage. Hence, our department provides aid to everybody indiscriminately with all due love, modesty, and dignity. In this context, I wish to emphasize that the department derives its moral values from the biblical teaching and from the example set by the Good Samaritan, who is depicted in our logo, love, modesty, and rendering service to the beneficiaries with dignity, being among the most important values that the department cherishes in doing our daily work. Our effort on the ground is simply a live test of love, sacrifice, and dedication, because we cannot test our love with words and sermons. To love your neighbor as you love yourself is a beautiful speech, but to what extent can you put it in practice in your daily life? To what extent are you prepared to take off your own garment and give it to someone who does not have one? How prepared are you to take off your shoes and give them to a barefooted person? Or to empty your pocket and donate the money to help a patient in need of medication or shelter? To what extent are you willing to help those who were behind your displacement, the looting of your possessions, or the kidnapping of a relative of yours? To what extent are you ready to lend a helping hand to someone who does harm to you and does not even thank you for the favor you have done to them? We experience this challenge every day, not only in respect of the daily problems we encounter with the beneficiaries, which in fact requires training on how to deal with traumatized stricken people, but also in respect of training on tolerance, dedication, to work and on sustaining the constant risk posed by the every nature of the jobs we do every day. 2 years ago, we lost 2 martyrs in the city of Dar'a when shells hit the distribution center of our department. I was appreciating very much the speech of you about, some peacemakers. But really we have all our volunteers are peacemakers, but working silently and really paying a high price on daily basis to transmit like a silent message of the peace through the humanitarian work. Although that was a really painful experience, it acted as a further incentive for us to go on, as it were a crossing point for us from the Calvary of pains to the joy of resurrection. We now go through this challenge every day. We go out of our homes while we do not know whether or not we will be back safe to our families and to our children. This constitutes a conscious commitment to those who want to identify themselves with the agonized, displaced, expatriates, and the sick, who is sick and I'm not weak, who is weak and I'm not weak, as of St. Paul. Sometimes we go through such experiences successfully. Sometimes we lag behind and withdraw because of our human weaknesses and selfishness. or else as a consequence of exhaustion, frustration, anxiety, fear, and sadness. Nevertheless, it eventually remains an experience of great joy. Words can never express how heartily happy we feel when we see smiles are back to many faces on which such pleasant human expressions have been long obscured by the burdensome crisis. We cannot possibly describe how happy we are when we see that its displaced family have been ensured a shelter, or that a patient suffering from a cancer has been enabled to continue treatment, or that a disabled person who cannot walk has got a wheelchair, or that a whole village has had access to potable water through the digging of water well. All such things are achieved quietly and without much show in the media, thus maintaining the self-dignity of the beneficiaries who had for long been well-off benefactors but became needy people overnight. Several areas in Syria have recently been of scene of sudden, forced displacement. The population fled for their lives with barely their clothes on them, and they hardly had the opportunity to take along any of their belongings. They left behind all that they had earned hard throughout their lives, which was all looted and devastated. With its specialized team, well trained on how to respond to emergencies, the department was actually the first body to receive those afflicted people, providing them with necessary first aid and emergency supplies, and ensuring them shelter, food, and children clothing. Such was the case in the old Homs, the city of Homs, Kasab, the city situated on the Syrian-Turkish borders opposite Antioch, and more recently in the city of Idlib and Jisr Shughur, where the population fled from the city when it was swarmed over by armed groups. All this has been achieved on the basis of firm belief and commitment towards our society. As we see, relief work is not a social hobby. It is rather a faith-based commitment towards our brothers, who is born in the image of our Lord. Glory be to him. We are all well aware that the Master will ask us on the last day about what we have done to our brethren, as if then he would be asking us what we have done to him. The Judgment Day chapter, according to Matthew 25, chapter 39, we recited during the Teriodis season, portrays this lifetime illustration with matchless clarity. Before I conclude, I wish to advise and to let you know that the Bells of the East, a popular program weekly broadcasted on Al Mayadeen TV station and seen by over 25 million viewers a few weeks ago, dedicated a special edition on shedding light on this ongoing work. It is a testimonial that we today pride ourselves on, for it will undoubtedly contribute to consolidating Christian presence and promote the role of Christians as messengers of peace and intermediaries in any political reconciliation-based solutions that would ensure the country peace, security, and stability in the future. We do believe that Christians, through such unique work, can play a big role in future reconciliation among all the conflicted sectarian, let's say, groups in Syria. And I think we have a historical role that we have to play in order really to restore what we lost during, let's say, the crisis. Because what we are witnessing, like in Iraq, a severe sectarian conflicts among groups who used to live together for many years, and all of a sudden they become enemies. There has been something wrong, in my opinion. And maybe, as you said, there is like a task on everybody, and it is like a mission, not only for religious leaders, but for every person, Muslims, Christians, Jew, anyone who believe in peace, to play such important role. Otherwise, we would really witness a severe, much more severe, let's say, situation in the cradle of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. In conclusion, I say God has bestowed His grace on us so that we be His witnesses to His work. Because had it not been for these anguished, afflicted, and needy, we would not have been granted the opportunity to render this service, which we beseech God, glory to Him, to accept. Thanks again to the Greek Archdiocese of North America for having this seminar through the Hellenic Holy Cross Seminary, and also thanks to the Department of Inter-Orthodox Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations, really to organize such an event and to let you know, let's say, a little about what we are suffering and what we are doing in our context. Before I come here, I really sent by email to Nick this presentation and also a documentary film on the work of our department, subtitles in English language, and I think he can really send it to you by email so that really you can get more idea about our work. Thank you so much.